Chris made a snarky remark in one of my other videos saying, well gosh, that sounds real easy to balance, and I think he was just implying that I should remove the spells. But I'm not down with that. I don't want to do that. I want to see if it can actually be done otherwise. And I think all those changes I just described are enough to do it. At least in my opinion. Only time will tell, right? So yeah, that took care of the spells, and the enemy's stats, and the value of items, and all that crazy stuff. There were a couple of other miscellaneous things I changed, and will actually be changing again in a little bit. I've been going over my spreadsheet of data for this mod that I'm using to like keep track of all the changes I made, and I came up with a few more I wanted to make, because that's just the kind of tedious person I am. This isn't going to warrant like another release post or anything. I kind of reevaluated how much I wanted each item to be worth, and I came up with some formulas that I was satisfied with to calculate their costs. But the items that are going to be changing are a few of the scrolls. Basically, do you remember back whenever we were taking care of the lighthouse and we found the Burst of Light scroll underneath the Port Said, which we could use to learn Solar Wrath early? Shola, you're much slower than everyone else. I need to get your dexterity up. Well, I was giving those scrolls some thought, because there are more scrolls in this game than there are spells to learn. And we had used, or well, I had chosen to use the extra scrolls as spells that you could cast at rank 10. Normally whenever you cast a spell by using a scroll in combat, the spell is rank 5. But since we've got extra scrolls and nothing else to do with them anyway, I decided to expand them and make some other spells that you could cast at rank 10. And the aura spells were among them. There's a scroll that's unused in the original game called Command that does the same thing. It casts Charming at rank 10. And I had also created a scroll that casts Mirror at rank 10. But I was giving it some thought today, and I kind of decided I wasn't really satisfied with those, because unlike a wand, a scroll is one-time use. You use a scroll to cast a spell and it's gone. So the whole point of these scrolls is to use them to cast in combat, and that's really hard to justify their cost if they're only one-time use, you know? So I figured that maybe offensive spells were not the best suited to this use, and defensive spells that boost stats and things are much more palatable for that kind of thing. So I'm going to be changing all my rank 10 spellcasting scrolls to be buffs instead of things that are used against the enemies. And as it so happens, there are 5 of them, and there were 5 things I felt were actually worth using at rank 10. Those spells are Air Shield, Brilliance, Strength, Dexterity, and Photosynthesis. So yeah, all 5 of those spells will be available on scrolls that you can use to cast them at rank 10, no matter what your wizard level or whether you're even a wizard at all. And I think those will be better uses of those scrolls, ultimately. Did that Scorpion have a treasure pile? I don't think he did. I also don't think there's anything all the way back here. Like, you can go around the side of Ugarit, but I don't think there's any encounters or treasures. No, we'll just look. We'll just go so you can see and we can explore a little bit as I continue to prattle on. So, to get 5 extra scrolls, there were a couple of key items I'm going to be ending up using. And one of them is actually the letter to Zaman from the beginning that the king hands you. It has a scroll icon, and the lighthouse scroll did too, and I was still able to turn the lighthouse scroll into a spellcasting scroll, so I think I'll be able to do the same for Zaman's letter. What I'm thinking of doing with that one is making that the poison scroll, because then it's like, it serves both the double purpose of telling Zaman that you're poisoned, and also you can learn poison from it. Haha. I know that's a bit silly, I don't care. You can see that green gem thing from here. That's a pretty cool detail. That's the chamber of the Emperor of Ugarit that you see floating over there. I don't know what kind of kooky magic they've got going on to make that work, but this is just a small glimpse of the splendor of Ugarit. So yeah, I was going to turn the Zaman Scroll into the Poison Scroll, and then use the old Poison Scroll to make it another rank 10 something or other. I need to figure out all the details on that and make sure it's actually possible. But yeah, that's the plan. The other 4 scrolls, 2 of them were just unused things. No, 3 of them were actually. Formerly Detect Chaos, Detect Traps, and No Aspect. Those 3 scrolls were from the original. It had no purpose at all. And then there was the Lighthouse Scroll, yeah, so that's all 5. This is the main gate of Ugarit, and we could go right in here if we wanted, but I'm not gonna, not yet. There's still a couple of monsters I want to fight out here at the sand dunes, and I want to work my way around to the other side of Ugarit, because there's some stuff to do over there too. Oh my god, and those monsters out here. There's one. Hi, Dust Devil. I'm taking your treasure pile. You didn't guard it well enough. Wait, what was that one I just got? I really should pay closer attention when I'm picking things up. Speaking of picking things up, I was looking over the various maps I collected from treasure chests all along my journey here. And as it turns out, I was able to confirm that you can get treasures from all but 2 of the drop charts, which is kind of astonishing to me. And I think the other 2 might actually still exist anyway, and I might have just missed them somewhere, or they might still be out here in this adventure that we're on right now. Oddly enough, the 2 charts that I did not get maps from were the ones labeled Goblin Stronghold, which is very strange to me. But we'll see what happens with those. Like I said, there's still a chance that they exist. For the update, I removed the maps from the ones that we had confirmed existed, and I left a couple of maps on those last 2 drop charts, just so I know them if I see them later. Some way, somehow. And they're nothing out of the ordinary, either. Or, well, I guess technically they are out of the ordinary, by definition. The two maps I put in those chests are the map to Chaos Isle and the map to the Goblin Lair. I felt like those would be fitting to find other treasure chests somewhere, depending on what those chests are or where they might be. Like I said, both charts have the name Goblin Stronghold in their name, so I felt like those were reasonable maps to locate, even if it wasn't intended otherwise. I don't know why I attacked that one, it's just gonna run away. Where is it? Well, whatever. Ow, he stung me with lightning. Little stinker. Don't turn your back on me. Oh, this is one of the few Dust Devil encounters that actually has reinforcements. So, I removed the unnecessary maps, so you won't be playing the game and finding any extra ones in places that they otherwise would not be. Just those 2 drop charts that we haven't seen. What else was there? Was there anything else? Wow, that was pitiful. One of the stats I adjusted on the monsters. I decided to compensate certain enemies who had lost their resistances previously. Whenever I adjusted the weaknesses and resistances of everything, a bunch of stuff got offset. Like the Chaos Lieutenant with his 25 resistance to physical and all that fun stuff. Basically, I compared my database to that of the original to see which monsters lost stats, and I compensated them in their willpower and their protection bonuses, respectively, for magic and physicals. So if they lost magic resistance, they got more willpower. If they lost physical resistance, they got more protection. I don't know entirely how that will work out, some of the values I had to put in were above the normal limits. I don't know if those things get capped for enemies. I know stamina does. If you try to give an enemy more stamina than they're allowed, the game corrects it in battle. But you can only tell that because you can see like their health bar is not as full as it should be. Like, the health bar will be out of the value you put in, but they'll have the minimum value that are allowed. Or no, the maximum value they're allowed. Like, for example, if you tried to give 100 stamina to a monster where 90 is the max, then they would have 10 less health than they should at the start of the combat, and that would be reflected in their health bar. That kind of thing. But yeah, I had to give some of them some pretty intense bonuses, and I tried to make it reasonable. It's yet another thing that will require some testing to see for sure if it worked or not. Yet another dust devil. And there was one last change I wanted to discuss. I probably shouldn't say it's one last change, it's more like one more change, and I'll just remember more stuff as I continue thinking about it here. But I finally decided what to do about the Chaos Deathwing situation. I told you before, since the Chaos Lieutenant's weapon is grafted to his hand, I can give him a weapon without a model, and no one would notice the difference. And I went with the idea I had before. I gave him Tentacle Slap as his weapon, and I just respec'd it to have the same effect as a Chaos Deathwing normally would. It's not like the giant tentacle needs it right now, so that weapon's finally being put to use. And I renamed the old Chaos Deathwing to Death Striker. Obviously it is a pole. It has the same model as the Chaos Staff, which there's nothing we can do about that. But it has all the same effects as the Chaos Deathwing. And the enemy I ended up giving it to was the Bandit Kingpin, who formerly had the Chaos Sword. Now, you might also recall there have been times I mentioned that I wasn't really sure what to do about the Chaos Sword, because there weren't really any monsters that would be fitting to be holding it. Like, I wanted to give it to a Chaos monster, and all the Chaos monsters already had weapons I was happy with them having. But I decided to look over my weapon list and see who I'd given what things to, and there was, like I had said before, there were very few overlaps, very, very few. Most weapons in this game are only being used by one kind of enemy. But there was one weapon that was being used by 3 different things, as opposed to just 2 or 1. And that was the Giant Axe, which is the signature weapon of ogres from the original game. It was being used by hill ogres, which granted are very rare. It was also being used by ogre bosses, which themselves are fairly rare too, but a little more prominent than hill ogres. And it was being used by the Chaos Stormer, the bigger of the 2 crab people. And as much as I love how that axe looked in the hands of those, well, in the claws of those monsters, they were Chaos monsters that were not using Chaos weapons, and a sword is something they were perfectly capable of holding. So I decided to try it out and see. I spec'd them so that they could hold the weapon, and I ran off to see what it looks like in their hands. Their claws. And I was actually quite satisfied with the results. I thought it wouldn't look right with how they hold things, and with like the scale of the weapon and all that, but it actually works out pretty much perfectly. The hilt fits right into their claw, and the sword looks big enough to be intimidating, but not, but like small enough to still be reasonable. It's not ridiculous looking or anything. And it kind of reminds me of that video of that crab that picked up a knife. that one viral video where, like, every time the guy tries to take the knife off the crab, he, like, raises it. And that just makes me happy. So, yeah, I was like, I can live with this. The Chaos Sword is now used by the Chaos Stormer. And that is a reality I am perfectly willing to accept. And unfortunately, we won't be seeing any of that in this playthrough. So sad. Did I already get this? I thought I already got this. I did already get this. This is another one of those item boxes that just respawns for no reason. You can empty this sack as many times as you want. And you just need enough screen transitions for it to come back. Phew. Aww. Man, this winter air is drying me out so bad. I hate winter. It is the worst season. Which is a little bit odd, because I actually like being cold more often than being warm. Or rather, I would rather things be too cold than too warm, because you can always put on more layers, but you can't get more naked if things are too hot. Is Sholay still over here? Hey Sholay, you're still over here? Yeah, you are. One other thing I adjusted a little bit is this starting equipment from some of the characters. I tried to adjust it so everyone has different stuff whenever they first start out, because I'm just anal like that. And I also did it to, like, nerf everyone's starting equipment. So, like, you don't have anything too good right off the bat. Because I'm a meanie face. Like, the 5 characters you can start the game with all have, like, the worst armor you can be wearing at the start of the game. Things like that. Some of them were things I had to adjust as well, because I changed the strength requirements of the weapons. That was another major thing I can talk about. The requirements for using items. The original game, I guess they tried to balance the weapons such that their strength required is relative to their weight, which makes sense from like a realism perspective, but not so much from a game balance perspective. For example, the poleaxe is a much better weapon than the giant axe, but the giant axe requires more strength to hold because it's enormous. Like, the original game's strength requirement for the giant axe is 28, which is just 2 points from max. All these creepy salamanders. And the poleaxe is like strength 19, which Aileron can get like within just a couple levels of experience. Totally dumb. So I tried to give the strength requirements to the weapons in such a way that it's reflective of their actual usefulness as weapons. So the weakest weapons have the lowest strength requirements, and the strongest weapons have the highest strength requirements. Shelly, what are you doing over here? You're just chilling. She's vibing out there. This resulted in some things having their strength requirement lowered, obviously, and some of them were raised significantly, and to the point where a hero would not be able to use them normally. So I had to double check the weapons that I had given to the heroes to make sure they were still valid things they could actually use at their starting strength. And I double checked it on monsters too, but in their cases I just raised their strength until they were able to use the weapons. Because why would I ever give them less strength? We got a whole bunch more salamanders to kill. This is like their spot. This is the salamander spot. But on top of revamping the strength requirements of every weapon in the game, pardon me, I also decided to look at the strength requirements, or no, just the equip requirements for all of the accessories, too. Like, most accessories in this game do not have requirements for their use at all. Like, you got the rope here, it's got minimum intelligence 0, and it doesn't show the minimum strength because there isn't one, but it's also 0, I assure you that. In the new mod, it is not that anymore. I tried to give them strength and or intelligent requirements that made sense for the item. Like, if it's an item that doesn't have any magical properties, or requires, like, physical strength to wear or use, and then it has a strength requirement. The minimum was 10, and it goes up based on, like, the bonuses that the item provides. But that's also true for, like, intelligence, a minimum of 10 intelligence, and depending on what spells or special effects or whatever the thing has, that's reflected in the requirements of its use. Some things ended up with both requirements, like you'll need a certain amount of strength and intelligence to use a thing. And it affects some things more than others. Like, the rope in particular, I'm probably going to upset a lot of players with this, but the rope's strength requirement is now 18. So, the two characters that you would want to give it to, Brenna and Keelan, both need to earn some experience and raise their strength a fair margin before they can use the rope.